That's that agreement with the state for Ahern to allow police to go in, and
Oh, yeah.
so if you're so inclined to sign it and pass it down.
Yep.
We're live now.
Okay.
Turned on the mics. I had it muted.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What's that?
It's not 7 o'clock yet.
No. That's all right. We'll whisper. We're used to leaning back.
Hello.
Taking full advantage that I can once again sneak in at the last minute,
Well done.
now that we don't have.
So as maybe Scott has told you, this will be an abbreviated session. We don't have a quorum and don't anticipate having one, so only for informational purposes. So the hour being 7 o'clock on Monday, July 25th, 2022. We call it to order if it's not really a meeting.
I think you just say we're not gonna have a quorum, and we're,
Okay, we don't anticipate having a quorum tonight. We've been alerted to some health concerns with a couple counselors, and one counselor anticipated being out of town for work-related matters. So there will be no votes tonight taken, no public input on items on the agenda or not on the agenda. This will only be an informational meeting this evening, where we'll hear from Whitney Consulting in regards to assessing within the city, and also hear from Wes Anderson, Director of Public Works, in regards to solid waste. Then, once that occurs, we'll be adjourning the meeting, so I'd like to, should we have a roll call of any sort or not?
go right into the Pledge of Allegiance.
We'll go right into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure.
Scott, I'm wondering if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So, we'll start off with Steve Hamilton and Emily Goldstein, is that correct?
It is.
Yeah, hi, terrific, from Whitney Consulting Group. So thanks for being here tonight.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, councilors. This is the annual process where we bring forward to you the results of our examination of the performance of assessments, the value determinations in the assessing system as compared to the selling prices of property within the city. With me tonight is Emily Goldstein. Emily is here at least one day every week. She anchors our presence here in the city, and she is a very qualified and competent assessor in her own right, as well as being my youngest daughter. So I'm pleased that she's with me always. She's been with Whitney Consulting.
Move your dad closer to the microphone.
There we go.
I don't work well with a microphone, so she's been with Whitney Consulting now for 3.5 years, almost as long to the day as we've been serving the city of Laconia and completing these valuations. And so every 5 years, each community has to reappraise all of the property in the community in order to comply with the New Hampshire laws and the Constitution. You have determined the best way to keep assessments current is to do that valuation annually. So we complete an annual assessment update. The last time that we did it was in 2021. We were happy to make the estimates of value. At that point, the estimates that we made were at market value as required by the law. Market value is having an assessment to sales ratio of between 90 and 110%. And that is a typically pretty easy standard to attain and to maintain. But these are not typical times in the real estate market. They have not been for the last few years. And there's been some significant growth in value, and that reflects a lower ratio of assessment to selling price. And the Department of Revenue Administration, when they calculated the equalization ratio, they determined the median assessment had dropped to 81.7%. That basically is looking at a sample of sales that was offset by 6 months from the sample that we looked at. And so that would indicate the selling prices were approximately 22% higher than the assessments at that point. And when we look at the most recently occurring sales through April 1st of 2022, we see that there is a predictably strong real estate market. You want to talk about preliminary analysis and just...
Yeah, so when we're looking at the sales going up to April 1st, 2022, as they continue to increase, that would make the ratio farther and farther away from that 90 to 110% of value. As of yet, for April 1st, 2022, that steadying out that we would anticipate maybe coming forward hasn't yet happened. So as that increases, the idea is that the values will continue to go up for 2022, the tax year.
So we're going to be making adjustments based on the performance of sales within the community. We've analyzed 501 qualified sales from April 1st of 2021 through April 1st of 2022. We've broken it down for you in a categorical way. Overall, all of the property, when grouped together, was performing at about 71.7% of market value. Single families were a little bit higher than that, a little higher ratio of 74.7. Condominiums had increased in value to a point where the ratio was 67.6%. 2 to 3 families in the 73.4 range. 4 to 8 unit apartments, a little bit lower ratio at 72.9. Large apartment complexes, 9 units or more, were at 91.8%. And so there you can start to see evidence of why it's wise to bring these assessments together to make sure that everybody's at the same percentage of market value on an annual basis. Now, some of these categories only have a few sales. So the 9+ apartment properties, there were only 4 sales to look at, to analyze. And so that's not a very big population of a sample, so that we anticipate more variability within that. Mobile homes and campers were at about 65. Those are the more difficult properties to value, especially campers and campgrounds, because they come and they go and they change very quickly. So the 16 units that we looked at for that category, it doesn't represent as large an increase likely as we'll see when we finally understand each one of the sales. Commercial and industrial property, again, has a relatively small sample of 12 properties, and there's pretty high variability in that grouping, but it's showing a 66.6% ratio. Residential land only is performing at about 90%. This is something which we've noticed not only here in Laconia, but also in many of the other towns that we do valuations for. Vacant residential land is not as attractive to most people at this point in the market because of the very high barriers to development. And so it's very difficult to find a contractor. It's very difficult to get a house built. It's difficult to get all of the supplies that you need to be able to bring it together. So individual sales of residential lots have not been as attractive. they typically are a reasonable substitute for going out and buying a house, because the 3 to 6 months that it would take you to normally construct a house isn't that overwhelming a period of time. But we see now that it's taking people 2 or 3 years to be able to have that house built. And so people are unwilling to make the investment in the land in order to wait that long to have a place to live. Waterfront properties, we see continue to be kind of leading the parade in terms of the increase in value. But the 7 properties that we see there, they're pretty widely dispersed around all of the different waterfront areas. And so we're not sure that the 64% is going to be reflective in the end of the changes that we'll see. Yep.
In terms of the median ratio, we're aiming for between 90 and 100. In terms of the adjustment that you're going to make based on where these things are you taking it to the bottom of that range, or are you taking it to the top of that range based on market dynamics?
Well,
Or is
so
there some other way that you play it?
well, so we have to try and land within that range.
Right.
The
But if
thing
we're
that
sort of chasing the market, I guess is my
Right.
question, that we wouldn't want to be at the 90 if we're chasing the market up.
exactly. So I wish only that I knew what the future would be for the real estate market, because if I knew that, I wouldn't be standing here. I'd be sitting on an island that I would own in the Bahamas somewhere. But it's not unreasonable to predict that there's going to be more stability in the marketplace moving into next year. So if I had any foresight at all, it would be that the trend to higher values will plateau. We've seen that when we've examined statewide numbers, that the median selling price for properties has reached a plateau. Now, some of the markets are still catching up with that activity, and the further you get from the great source of value, which is the Metro Boston area, you get further afield of that, it still lags a little bit of what's happening here. And that seems to be a somewhat natural progression of value increases. But we examined the rate of change over the last year per month of the median selling prices within the single-family and condominium markets here in Laconia, and those are the large drivers of value. And we see that things have continued to increase even through March to the beginning of April. We see that likely to plateau. So our goal is going to be, as it's always been, since we've been working here, is to try and make the adjustments that are appropriate and necessary to bring the city to market value, but not to reach too far, and to try and make as many incremental changes as we can to stay within that range of value.
That's where the art comes in, right, and experience. So
Yeah, that's what our goal. So our goal will be to be in that range.
90 to 100 or 90 to 110?
So the full range is 90 to 110. I would expect that we're going to hope that we're going to be able to land in the low 90s, 94, 93. Okay, so there's going to be some increases in value. We know that. Just looking at these preliminary numbers, there could be some significant ones. But an increase in the assessment really doesn't mean that your tax bill is going to go up, because all of the values of all of the properties get collected, and then they enter into the formula that creates the tax rate. So as values increase, if everything stayed the same on the spending side, then the tax rate will go down in a relatively similar manner. It may not be dollar for dollar, and it's going to vary from property to property. A basic rule of thumb that we all learn when we're small assessors is that in a revaluation process, about a third of property owners are going to see their tax bill go up. About a third of property owners are going to see their tax bill go down because their values wouldn't have changed the way that everybody else's values did. And about a third of those properties are going to see their tax bill stay about the same because of the change in the tax rate.
And how do you, sorry, in terms of, I think we've had a record year in terms of additions to property values as well.
Yeah, I think the one of the indicators we track for our tax cap formula is new building permit value, self-declared when either new construction or renovation or additions happen. So we had 39 million for the assessing year that ended on March 31st. And again, completely different from what the assessors do, but this is on building permits, and it doesn't mean that it all comes on line in that given year, but we've just got to use some methodology and be consistent with it. But the 39 million certainly
39 or 49?
was,
I thought it was 49, but maybe I'm.
I can tell you in 1 second because I have my handy dandy budget book.
So that's another factor that.
That is another factor that enters into the calculation of the
Helps
tax
everybody.
rate. And as Scott indicated, it isn't a dollar for dollar exchange because we can't just go to the building permit and take down whatever an individual has reported for their building permit amount. We go out and into the field, and city staff will inspect and measure every property that has a building permit issued on it. And then we can only capture the amount of value that was there on April 1st of 2022. So, but certainly any of the new construction has been inspected and has been included in the new value.
And Councilor Lippman, you're correct, it is 49, just shy of 49 million, so.
I have to give credit
The
to the
mayor,
mayor.
okay. So, but still, that by and far, dwarfs any numbers that we've seen in the prior 10 years. I mean, it's a significant increase.
So this process, we're going to be we've already started undertaking the analysis, and this preliminary analysis is an example of what we're doing and looking at it. We're going to begin to make changes within the system. Owners and taxpayers are going to be able to access a lot of information on the city's website at the assessing department link. We're also going to be providing a link to our software provider that will allow people to look up every property in the city. We'll be able to search for sales of similar type properties. We have a lot of tools that will be available. We're also going to be available to get questions when we get our values finalized. When we're done with the valuation process, we'll be putting them up on the website. We encourage people to call into the assessing department when they see the results of the revaluation and ask any question they feel like they need to ask. That's fine. That's what we're here for. You can come into the assessing office too, but due to continuing concern over social distancing, there isn't a lot of space in the assessing department, and we won't be able to take a lot of people at one time. So the telephone is probably going to be the best resource for people to reach out and get their questions answered. Finally, if any taxpayer disagrees with the assessment of their property in any tax year, they can file an abatement request with the city. We have a board of assessors that examines these abatement requests and determines them on an annual basis. You can't file an abatement until you get your final notice of tax, which is the December tax bill. And then from that point, you have until March 1st of 2023 in order to file a written abatement application. Doesn't have to be an exhaustive application. You don't necessarily have to have an appraisal done, but you should have some basis to be able to communicate to the staff and to the Board of Assessors what your concern is about your assessment. Before you get to the point of filing an abatement, we hope that you've availed yourself of the informal process of giving a call in and talking to us about the assessment of your property. And I think that's about all that we had to bring to you tonight, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any changes in, sorry?
That's perfectly
Are
fine.
there any changes in state law affecting either appeal rights or valuation issues that passed this past session?
No, so there are no significant changes to any of the processes, the timing of any appeals, the way that a taxpayer would approach an abatement or appealing an abatement decision. Those are all been very stable in the law. Any changes that have been made to the assessing system are minor adjustments to exemptions and credits and the way that cities and towns may adopt them.
And abatement interest.
Yeah, and the calculation of abatement interest has been
And
updated.
I know you do work in other communities as a consulting firm. You have a sense of how Laconia has fared in terms of the appreciation. Are we median, upper quartile, lower quartile?
So in terms of, for this year, I would say a little bit ahead of the curve, but for last year, a little bit behind the curve. And so, as I described, the changes in value strike like a wave. So it will be higher in one point when you look at the wave than it will be further down the line. And so it isn't surprising that this portion of the wave here is a little bit larger as it was a little bit smaller last year, but it's a great question.
Steve and Emily, thank you. And I know, Steve, you started off by saying that under state law, you're required every 5 years to do a full-blown reval if you haven't done the cyclical or the annual one like we're doing. Can you just speak a little bit anecdotally of what you've either seen firsthand anywhere along in your career or just heard from other communities about resident inquiries and number of phone calls and number of concerns over communities who might take our approach and do this cyclical update annually versus those who might wait for the 5-year window and then come in and get everybody up to that 90 to 110% range in one giant step?
In one shot. So my experience is that is not the preferred method because doing an annual update or even every 2 years is preferred to waiting the whole 5 years because these values do change and they can change quite a lot in one leap if you wait the 5 years. Either up, where we saw in, I think, Manchester last year, a 45% increase in one year of the values, or in my experience in the town that I pay taxes in, where we saw in 1 year a 39% drop in the values because it was timed poorly with the last recession, the Great Recession. And so whether values are going up or whether values are going down, the weighting is not favorable. It disfavors the taxpayers. So.
And do you see a similar correlation of then abatement requests too, which certainly take staff time and sometimes take staff time at the court level?
Yeah, and so one thing that we're really proud of here in the assessing department in Laconia is the way that we do handle abatement requests. We get a number of abatement requests annually. I think we had 57 this year, which is certainly a lot less than a community that we do of about the same parcel count that had waited 2 years, and they had twice as many abatement requests. And so that frequency of reappraisal helps us to do two things. We refine the assessments more often, and like with sanding a block of wood, the better you do and the longer you attend to sanding it, the smoother the results are going to be. But also, people are more comfortable with the whole process. And the things that we've helped people to understand about the process, and we have explained last year, they're probably going to remember it this year more than if they had to wait a longer period of time. So Those forces do tend to lower the temperature of concern by taxpayers. We're always going to have concerned taxpayers, and we should, because this whole process does a pretty good job of finding a value for pretty much everybody. But it's like a sweater that is one size fits all. It really doesn't. They rarely fit me because I have long arms, and that it just doesn't work. But 90% of the time, it does a good job on 90% of the properties. So we know that there are going to be problems with properties. We actually enjoy helping people to resolve their difficulties with the assessing process, and we think that the city's structure of having a board of assessors is a very good structure. It's a process that works well and gives an immediate resolution to a lot of people. Very few people go on to appeal the decisions of our board at either the Board of Tax and Land Appeals or in the Superior Court. Most of them get resolved here at the local level.
The 5-year method's called the pitchfork method.
Any other questions?
I remember when we did it that way.
Steve and Emily, thank you very much. Unless I missed it, this is one of the first presentations you've given, Steve, where you haven't brought up Mrs. Hamilton. Which I always appreciate.
Mr. Mayor, that may have been by design.
I let Steve know we had an over-under bet, but I didn't tell him what that number was on it, so. I think
He was in on it, I guess.
Oh, okay, all right.
It was on
okay.
DraftKings before the meeting,
Okay,
placing his
fair
numbers.
enough.
I will say that there were 3 opportunities in my presentation where I would have normally fit one in.
I always look forward to it. I really do. Thank you very much.
No, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Thank you both.
Moving on to our second presentation. Wes Anderson.
And I did tell Steve that I on purpose did not wear one of my Jerry Garcia ties tonight, so we didn't have too much color and clashing and stuff, because one is enough, two is, so I deferred to Steve tonight.
We almost always wind up on the days that we're here together with Jerry Garcia. 'Cause he's ahead of me. He says he has about 40. I only have about 25, so,
Wow.
but I'm catching up.
There we go.
Wow, that's a lot of Jerry Garcia ties. Wow.
All the secrets come out now.
Right, yeah. Mhm.
Are we seeing the full thing? Windows P? Duplicate.
Windows P here.
Yep. Windows?
Yep, so duplicate.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yep, and it did do it. And now we just need to change the display setting.
It keeps changing different on us.
Nope, gotta hit the drop down
Which one? Oh,
right
yeah.
there. And then do,
Duplicate slideshow.
yep.
White it out.
Come on, technology.
There we go.
I think she has to switch on hers.
Yeah, she does. Okay, so tonight's presentation is on solid waste, and feel free to stop and ask questions as we go through. Basically, the contract expires at the last day of September of this year. So on the 1st of October, we have to have a new contract for the collection of solid waste at the curb. The last time we put a bid out was March 7th. The bids came in April, and we're going to talk next on the results of the bid. But we only had one bidder, and that was Casella. Decisions that we have to make over the next month or so is tonight is a presentation on whether to stay automated or manual. We're going to ask for the city council's decision at your August 8th meeting. If you do decide to go automated, then we'll come back to you with a presentation on September 12th and ask for the decision on September 26th. This is the history of the trash collection contracts curbside. The October 2021 extension is basically the contract from 2017, and this is the last extension year that expires at the end of September. So you can see for that extension year, we were just over $665,000. In February 2021, we went out for automated bids only, and at that point, the bid came back just underneath $760,000. December 2021, we went back out for bid again for automated only, and it was just under $840,000. The bids that we received in April for automated came in at $855,000, and the manual was $1.126 million. The difference between manual and automated is $271,000. When you look down, you can see why we only had one bidder this time. In February of 2021, Waste Management submitted a bid, and they were $1.179 million, which was significantly over Casella's bid of $759,000. So that's why we're not seeing any more bids from Waste Management. You also asked us to look at the in-house collection option. To do that, I had to make some assumptions. First is I kept the same level of solid waste service. Yes.
Before you go there, could you explain the first column? Is October 21 extension is for
That's the,
which period?
Can you bring that back?
that's the extension that we did in 2021 that expires this September. So it was the extension, last extension year of the contract from 2017.
So it was a 3-year contract issued in 2017 that had 2 separate 1-year extensions if the city chose to exercise them. So we've run the full 3 fixed and the 2 additional separate 1-year agreements, and now there's no more extensions tied into that contract, and that's why we're back out to bid.
And have we asked for an extension on the, even though we've, it's not impossible that a contract that would otherwise expire could be extended. I've seen that at state government level where something is a 5-year term and there's an extension on that. We haven't explored that yet, have we?
No, we have not, but I would anticipate what they submitted for the manual bid will be what they're going to ask for in their extension.
I mean, if that's truly their cost of doing business now, that's,
Yeah.
they would say, sure, we'll extend it, here's the number.
Yes.
But to at least go out with a competitive bid, which is always good to do, and that's why you typically don't enter into, 10-year contracts on these things, because you want the competitive bidding, and unfortunately, this is one of those industries where there's not a lot of competition anymore, and I think mostly that's due to a tight labor market.
Tight landfill market too, isn't it, or not?
Well, this is just for
Getting tighter, but I mean, I think the folks just aren't extending and wanting to take on new territories because they just don't have the employees with the CDL licenses to go out and do that anymore. There's a lot of competition in that world, and I think from what we're seeing is most companies are hunkering down with the communities they have and not really looking to expand their piece of the pie.
So in pricing out the in-house option, I make some assumptions. Same level of solid waste collection service that we do right now. I made no impact to the department in regards to summer extra services. So basically it was minimal staffing, and then I didn't consider any impact on the department for vacations, personal sick days, or lost time due to injuries. And remember that garbage collection is the 4th most dangerous profession in the United States. Okay, then annual equipment costs are,
Hold on one, Wes.
I still have more questions on
okay.
In terms of the cost that's on this
Right.
slide here, do we represent within these figures the cost, the borrowing cost and the debt service for the containers?
This is just collection. This is the contract between us and the party. There is no cost in here for collection, because otherwise it'd make it cost comparison difficult.
Understood. I just want public to be clear that the $271,000 difference is just pure collection.
Correct.
That gets net down, it would get net down by the cost of buying the barrels, if you will. Although it's not all 1 year, it's not gonna be like you would finance it over a period of time, which would,
Yeah, and we discussed that at the Public Works Committee meeting the other day. We're using a ballpark number of somewhere of $70,000 to $80,000 on a 10-year bond, and some of that would be determined by the exact number of carts or toters that we need and the sizes that we need. But we've got a placeholder if the council moves forward for interest only in year one for a bond for that, and obviously that would be subject to where interest rates are and what the final need is for the toters. But yes, that would bring that 271 down to probably $200,000.
thank you. Sorry.
And then, any new hires would be the family health insurance plan, because we tend to see that we're getting more older people. We're tending to get more older who have families. And then, union contract, they'd be underneath our existing one, and there's no inflation, because that was the simplest way of doing the cost comparison. Okay, so this is what we came up with costs. Manual collection on the left, automated collection on the right. So cost is $1.128 million for manual collection based off of those assumptions, and $946,000 for automated collection. Not much difference in the trucks. There is some difference in there, but because of the assumption for keeping the same level of service, we have to get 4 trucks.
So you have to figure in on the automated collection, again, is that 946 plus 70 per year over a
Correct.
10-year period?
Yep.
Okay, so really that comes out to just over $1 million. Fairly comparable to the manual collection once you figure in the cost of the toter.
Right. But again, there's a whole bunch of assumptions that were made on this that probably realistically on manual collection is not valid. But it's a reasonable low end. So comparing the two, contract versus in-house, you can see for the automated, in-house is about $100,000 over what it would cost to do Casella, and we're about even on it, but again, the assumptions that I had to make for cost is where that difference is.
And a few other, just to jump in, there's a few other gray areas in there that don't necessarily materialize here. Now you've got 4 more vehicles that mechanics are handling. Do we have appropriate areas to be spraying out these trucks every night and catching that liquid runoff and those types of things? Again, you got to have a backup truck because we don't have a pool to go through. If we need 2 automated trucks to run the trash and recycling route, you've got to have that backup. Do you cross-train drivers? What productivity do we lose if somebody's out sick or on vacation and they're operating the truck, and now you've got to pull somebody off of the highways or the streets to be driving the truck for that week? So you do lose some productivity because, again, only operating one curbside system is very much different than Waste Management or Casella, where they're operating multiple and they could pull people in pinches if there's a demand. So there's a lot of small things that aren't easy to quantify necessarily with a dollar, but do present challenges. And just the last thing is just, we've had 1 vacancy right now, even with the new pay scale that we're having challenges filling and looking around and being competitive. This would require the hiring of several new people in a competitive market, which there's no guarantee.
So, and for purposes of the presentation in public tonight, I'm fine with what you're displaying here, but I'd like to get a little bit more detailed in terms of what's behind it. Like, I don't see anything here for workers' comp insurance specifically. And
All that was based in there. All that was included in my numbers.
that's, I guess, then what I'm asking you to do is to see all that was in the number.
You can provide some more.
So,
And just one other assumption on that is the assumption of 4 trucks versus 3 or 2. Can you kind of talk through that for a moment?
okay, so summertime collection, Monday through Friday, you got one truck dedicated to curbside trash. On the recycling week, you've got a second truck Monday through Friday dedicated to curbside recycling collection. In the summertime, the amount of support that we provide to the parks Lakeside Avenue, plus we now have the second route for Friday pickup in the Weirs Beach area. That's the third truck. Then you need one spare, because at some point you're gonna lose a truck, and if you don't have one, you know, we're not Casella at that point. We're gonna have to either work all night or skip somebody and try to catch up later. So that's why you gotta have one spare.
So so if we went automated, it's three, or if you, regardless, it's three trash trucks and one smaller truck, because Casella right now is picking up all the individual trash barrels, the one behind City Hall, the ones in Rotary Park, the ones in our beaches, and they're driving around and doing that several days a week. And like Wes said, right now, we're currently doing that extra pickup in the Weirs in the summertime as well, so there's two pickups there.
I'm asking some of these questions, not because I'm trying to challenge you, but I want to make sure that the information gets out to the public in terms of who have concerns about this.
And then for the Casella's contract exceptions, of course, they're covering themselves for inflation. They're gonna be the CPI for urban consumer, garbage and trash collection, but no less than 5%. So if it's over 5%, they're getting whatever the CPI happens to be for that grouping. Luckily, they saw their handwriting on the wall, and they changed it from being $3 a gallon floor for diesel fuel to $4 a gallon. So if the fuel prices come down and we're hovering around $4, a little bit less than $4, we won't have a surcharge for fuel. Recycling rate contamination, no more than 5%. If we go over 5%, they'll work with us to help lower it again. It's based off of 5,400 stops. That's approximately how many stops we're doing right now. Underneath the automated, that is cans, not properties. Right now, underneath manual, that is basically a property.
Can you explain that one more time? Because are you saying that under the manual, each stop is a property?
Correct.
Under this, we'd be, assuming each property had currently two receptacles, that would be considered 10,800 stops?
That'll be, if you're counted by cans right now, the two receptacles, that would be around 10,800 stops.
Okay.
Okay, in the particular case for automated, because you're not having one person, you know, jump off dumping two cans fast. You're now having to move the truck and the arms going out to pick it up. But we're lowering that because we're going from 2 cans per residence for a single family to 164. So they're not losing anything in capacity wise, but we're not dealing with 2 cans, we're dealing with 1.
So right now, you're capped at 2 30-gallon trash containers is what you're allowed to be putting out as a single-family residence. This would be replacing it with 1 64-gallon toter. So your capacity is actually up 4 additional gallons, but it's only going to be 1 stop for all of our single-family home residential properties. So that number is pretty close to what we think it's going to be.
Thank you.
Then there was $9,000 to rent a truck for automated collection if we decide to go before, that's an early start before the trucks arrive. Because by the time you order to ship, it's probably 12 to 15 months. Now, Casella, like any other large firms, they pre-order trucks knowing they're gonna have replacements. If we approve the contract in enough time to effect the pre-orders, they can just change it from being a manual truck to an automated truck. So we could have it less than that, but we won't know until such time as we make a decision and we sign a contract with Casella. And then recycling and transportation processing, that's the cost of sorting it at their central facility is $148 a ton. Whatever decision the city council makes, we'll have a public information campaign that's really associated with whatever changes that you make to try to keep the manual system or go to automated. It just will depend upon what your decision is. It will include public information meetings, ads and articles in the Laconia Daily Sun, Laconia Links newsletter on YouTube and Channel 24. And topics that we're going to have to consider is options for senior citizens, what happens with the existing containers if you do decide to go automated. There are about 1,000 Laconia Recycles containers that we sold about 7 years ago now that are out there that we don't really have a good feel for where they're located and how many still remain. There's a chance of lowering cost if we do decide to go automated, if we can get a handle on how many are out there. If you do decide to impose container limits, we'll have to talk that. And again, if we go automated, we'll have to talk excess trash container procedures. So that's really what the public information campaign is going to be based off, depending upon what decisions that you as a city council make. Any other questions?
Container limits, could you explain what you mean by that?
Pardon?
Container limits, can you
Right,
explain
right
what that
now,
means?
the council has established a container limit of 2 32-gallon cans per single-family home. Then it goes up to triplex is 2 per, so it'd be 6. Once you go over 3 units, the maximum number is 7, whether it's a condo or an apartment complex. For businesses, the maximum number of cans right now is 7 30-gallon trash cans. And it's in city ordinance.
And the last item after that, on your presentation was,
Well, right now, we have excess trash
excess
containers
yeah,
that you
that
can
was
put
it.
out. And you buy a sticker from either City Hall or from Public Works. There's a handful of people who've been buying it. We're probably in the neighborhood of about 20 or 30 purchases over the last year since we inputted it.
Yeah, it's not anything that's huge, but we try to do that for the family who said, hey, when I have a big gathering and I can't fit everything in 2 trash barrels, what do I do? So with the automated, we'd have to try to, figure that out because, people for recycling or their trash can't be putting out something that is not going to be able to be lifted appropriately by the arm, so.
and large items that people want hauled away, that people can pay now, is that changing with this?
It does in a degree. Right now, if it's a non-metal item, you can pick it up on your normal day of service because for the most part, there'll be automated trucks if you decide to go that way. What we've established is in the contract was required 3 days of appointment-only pickup of bulky items. So it could be metal or just large furniture or whatever would be picked up. But it'd be by appointment only versus, on your normal day of pickup.
So right now on the metal, since we recycle that, there's a number on there that says if you have a metal item, call, and we have 1 day a month, and we tell the person when the next pickup day, and we put them on the list. It would just change, so now there would be 3 days a month for your bulky items. So rather than automatically being once a week, it might be the 1st and the 15th and the 25th or whatever it is, and you would just say, hey, I'm gonna put it out on this date, and for most people, that still works. So we'd be modifying it, but it would still be available, and it would be 3 times a month versus 4 times a month right now. But it would still try to make it efficient. The other thing that Wes and I and the Public Works spoke of is if we do go with an automated system, we would look to start it ideally no earlier than April 1st, May 1st, for the simple thing, if we know there's going to be a learning curve. We know we want to get a lot of information out about how to place the carts and separate them so the arms can do their work. We figure having one fewer obstacle of not having snowbanks and starting this in January or February makes a whole lot of sense, because if you started in April, it gives you, 6 months, 8 months before you start rolling into winter as we work out a few of the bumps. And as residents, work out a few bumps, which we know there will be along the way. But it just seems to make sense to not start it in the middle of winter just to add to the degree of difficulty.
And I know there are many communities that do this in terms of, there are probably slightly different ways that they do it. Does Casella have a video or something that would demonstrate so people could see what it would look like?
We actually, if we do go automated and we do get the grant from the recycling partnership, a separate portion of that grant is for education, and they will pay for developing the audio visual to go onto the website and on Channel 24.
And you can go on YouTube right now and just Google automated trash pickup, and you can steal great examples from other communities who have already created their own, and they go out with the mayor and counselors and they show it how easy it is to do it. And some bring humor into it and some don't, but there's definitely an opportunity and some good examples to borrow from.
I think it'd be good to maybe pull some of those and share them on our website in advance.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We can put some out in time for the links this Friday and embed the links so it gets out, and also put them on the website.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Wes? Thanks very much, Wes.
I'm just going to chime in. We do need a decision one way or the other at the next meeting, because this contract is coming down to the wire.
Okay.
Can we also post this presentation is a little bit different than what we had in the packet, just so we
Yes.
get it all out there.
I'd like to adjourn the meeting at 7:48 PM. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Wes.